I was researching places, locations where there would be some kind of symmetries of boats really, and via Google basically I kind of came across the one in Mauritania near Nouadhibou, which then I did a bit more research about, and there are not very much about it, but a few images, photographs what kind of really attracted me, and I just thought, wow, it's amazing, those boats, Some of them were kind of caught up in the sand, and some others were in the water rotting away. And then by reading a bit more, I realized that Nouadhibou was also kind of quite well known for his bird watching, and also because it's a location where a lot of illegal immigrants are trying to escape to the Canary Islands. Then with all that in mind, only by researching the internet, I thought it would be the ideal situation, and I should go and have a look really. Then last summer, in July, I did a recce, whereby I went, I took also some photographs, and I actually researched location for filming. And obviously, going there confirmed that that was going to be the place I was going to shoot my final film installation or video installation. I mean, as I said, for me it was really important as a space because you had the bird immigrating from north to south, you had the people trying to escape, you had also this boat who were kind of dumped there and, lifeless in some ways. And because of that kind of space of movement, I was really kind of, for that will be, encompassing all those kind of issues that interest me. Well, issue on immigration and mobility really, and travels. On the sea, you find a lot of objects, and although it's quite isolated, as beaches, it's kind of full of things, full of objects, whether they're shoes, whether there are a lot of cords and anchors, and yeah, you can find a lot of things which tells you a bit about the life that used to go on those boats, really, which is quite intriguing. We also managed to go on some of the boats, and you can see that in one of the screens downstairs in the video installation, and that was quite amazing also because obviously inside the boat was quite chaotic, but you had a lot of still paperwork, logbooks and things like that from, I remember one of the boats, for example, must have been a Chinese boat or a boat coming from China, because a lot of the things we find, or the paperwork we find scattered on the floor, had some Chinese writing on it. So yeah, that for me was quite interesting, although I didn't really focused on that for this piece of work because for safety reasons really it was a bit dangerous at times to be on some of those boats because, as you understand, they're full of rust and holes and and quite not really stable, and we didn't spend too much time on them. But yeah, the beach really tells you about the activity there, because as I said, you have also those guys who are waiting to go and who are making their lunches or tea there. Then you can see little places where they're being kind of camping or picnicking, in order to wait for the boats to come and get them and for them to leave. And it's a kind of very strange, surrealist space, really. And also the landscape is just amazing because you've got the Atlantic Sea, which we know is very rough as a sea, and then you have the deserts, and it's really sand, dryness meeting the sea, wet, and it's dry and wet next to each other, and that creates kind of really amazing. I've never seen that before. I mean, we used to the sand on the beach, but the desert sand is not the same, and this part of the Atlantic, the north of, it's very windy, and you have some kind of quite uncanny, weather stuff going on, So yeah, I mean, do all that, although it was difficult for us in terms of the crew filming, all that kind of added to the drama perhaps of the place, It's not just the boat, it's also the location, the landscape itself, etc. that kind of added a bit to the work itself. And then next to that, obviously, next to where all those boats were left to rot, really, there was on the desert, yes, there was a kind of colonial, a military fort. I understand that Mauritania was colonized by the French, and they left, I think, in '61, and that fort had been abandoned in '61 when the French left Mauritania. And again, you have this kind of derelict, abandoned fort, which is beautiful. You can understand that at one point it must have been an amazing architecture, but was, through, you know, the erosion of the sea and the wind and the weather, really, kind of like the boats, the fort got eaten up in some ways by the weather condition, really. So it was really interesting in those two elements again, especially as, you know, movement in terms of the French colonizing and then leaving, again, that kind of added movement to the place, to the location. Okay, when I came back, I came back with a lot of footage, quite amazing footage, you know, because of the kind of lighting, I think, and as I said, the drama of the space itself. So I came back with like hours and hours of footage, and I thought I can either do a single screen version, who's gonna last 16 minutes. I never work more than 16, 18 minutes in terms of my video making, really. But then what will I do with the rest of the footage? So one way to go around that was to make more than one screen. And also because I like the idea of fragmentation, as you saw from the footages, whether it's in the light box of the video, that there are a lot of things were broken up. Then I kind of thought it would be quite interesting to kind of play on the scattering, on the fragmentation of the imagery rather than one single screen, which would be much more whole. And then came across, I mean, you know, I was lucky to be funded by the New Art Exchange in Nottingham, who was allowing me a fairly good budget in terms of my choice of equipment. So when I told them 14 screen, they went like, okay. And when I said I wanted them all to be in different sizes, because I wanted it to be quite chaotic, but also irregular, you know, because the place is really, in some ways, irregular when you go there. So they agreed, and that went okay. And then I thought, oh, there are so many imagery and places where you can find some cables or anchors, and you know, and that kind of link to the sand or to the land, to the sea, to those boats, you know. I thought it'd be nice to play along with the cables, and I decided instead of hiding cables from the monitors to actually use them and to play around with them. The speakers, and was another idea. I thought, oh, it'd be nice to have some hanging speakers, and then I came across those amazing round speakers, and I thought for me they were really good because they looked like those floating things on the fishing nets, you know, I don't know how they're called, but and then all that kind of happened organically in some ways, and that, you know, and then I created the installation downstairs. But I think it's really mainly having a good budget and working with a gallery which is open to new or, you know, challenging ways of presenting. For me, at this stage in my career, I felt it was important to work more sculpturally, more three-dimensionally. I've done a lot of video work. Often they were shown, although some of them were 2 screens or 3 screens, often in a black space, you know, black box, you know. And I really wanted to do something different for this work, because I was getting perhaps not bored, but I just needed a bit of a challenge for myself. Hence why also I've started playing around with the light boxing instead of showing them frame, you know, photographs framed, hanging on the wall, as I used to do. I kind of decided to work more with object, and the light box for me was perfect because it is an object, but it is still a photograph, and it has a cable which I can play around, and it plays with this idea of the light. And as you can see, a lot of those photographs, the light is very important, you know, in them. There is a very particular light and color that's happening, you know, in Mauritania. Anyway, during the time I was shooting, which was from July till December. My obsession, I should even say now, because there's been a few pieces about the sea, came with the fact that my parents immigrated from Algeria, then North Africa, to France by boat. And then in '86, I immigrated from France to England by boat, because at the time there was no Eurostar going from Dover, Calais, or Calais, Dover. So I did that by boat. And then came this idea of perhaps using the boat as a metaphor for kind of issue of diaspora or whatever. But as a starting point, very much from my own personal history, if you want. Then I did a few pieces of work in Algeria, but the sea in Algeria very much. And then for this piece, obviously, I decided to go to Mauritania. To be honest, it was the fact that it's in Africa and the fact that it's an Arab country is not really related. It just happened that this amazing scenery was happening there. Therefore, I went there. I was aware that there was other cemeteries, you know, of boats in other places, but none of them were on that scale. So now I went there. Of course, the fact that it's an African country, that's in an Arab country, made it easier for me because, you know, of the language I speak, because of, you know, it kind of made it easier. Yeah, you know, for me it's a bit strange because it's a different sea. It's not the Mediterranean Sea anymore. It's the Atlantic Sea. But it was, you know, it was interesting and challenging because obviously this sea has another history, you know, which is not very dissimilar from the Mediterranean Sea, but nevertheless, because of its connection and position in terms of geography, it has different connections.